Hi, and welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Javen.
And I'm Guff.
Guff,
Again.
I have a question for you.
Sure. We got an answer.
Would you rather
Oh no.
open 100 packs of Magic the Gathering cards,
Right?
spend $400, open 100 packs, or it's probably more than that
Yeah,
now,
probably. Yeah.
at a chance of getting a card that you want?
Right.
Or would you rather pay $100 to get that card?
Personally,
Yeah.
I mean, the logical oh man, I'd just open 100 packs.
See, I wouldn't. But you own a store and you can
But
sell the cards.
yeah, I
so-
can sell the secondary cards to somebody else, right? That's
So
the different.
I guess the root of the question I'm asking is,
Right.
what do you think about the secondary market for Magic the Gathering?
That's a huge market. There's a lot of money to be made there. If you have the money to invest, you can make a lot of money doing it. I've made quite a bit of money on the secondary market. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I sold on TCG Direct, sold on eBay, sold a lot of stuff in the store. There's money to be made. If you're a collector and you just sell, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
The secondhand market is I've talked about Magic specifically one time, or trading card games, in a podcast not that long ago, probably a year ago, I suppose now.
I don't remember.
There's one of the times you weren't part of the whole deal, and I spent a good amount of time talking about the whole market and buying and selling, and it's literally the stock market. You can literally stock market. There's actually a stock market webpage for Magic the Gathering cards that keep track of prices, and so you can watch cards go up and down over time. You literally can do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just that much. So yeah, you can go back and watch that video for that. But yeah, no, the secondary market, that's kind of going to be, I think, the focus of this secondary markets, or how games are creating their own little ecosystems around themselves, unknowingly, I think, at times too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think back in '92 or '93 when Magic was coming out, I don't think that they had any dream that it was going to be as big as it is.
That one day a card would sell for $2 million to Post Malone.
Right. And then there's cards there's a whole secondary market that is arguably worth more than the primary market itself.
Yeah.
Because there's people, and there's a YouTuber, Rudy from Alpha Investments, which, yeah, I know you either love or hate the guy, but he owns so much Magic stuff, he could probably collapse the secondary market by himself.
Huh.
I mean, if you ever seen, he'll show videos once in a while of his own open booster boxes, and he'll go back all the way back to some of the beta stuff and just show you a wall full of it.
Wow.
So if he released all at one time,
the market would
just plummet. It'd be like if the government just dumps everything, prints extra trillions of dollars for
Rudy is literally the Fort Knox of...
Yeah. So, but moving on from that, other game.
I want to talk about Magic a little bit more.
Yeah, let's do that.
So, as a store owner, you see the secondary market
a little differently than that.
A little differently. Yeah. So, me as a player, I see the secondary market of, a great example is the card Tarmogoyf.
Right. Yeah.
It used to be prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, very much so.
But
I used to like selling them.
But the idea was, it was an extraordinarily powerful card to use in a variety of decks.
Right.
And me as a tournament player,
right,
and a frequenter of the Eternal format scenes, I wanted Tarmogoyf.
Right.
Because there's so many decks I could run then if I had Tarmogoyfs. And I didn't need one, I needed four.
You just splash a little green and you're good to go.
Yeah, you splash a little green, you're good to go. But it's a matter of, like, the secondary market is almost a necessity,
right,
for tournament players. Because as a tournament player, if I want to run a deck and I need 4 copies of something...
Oh, yeah, good freaking luck.
Exactly.
Good luck in trying to find your 4 copies just on random people.
Because if I was going to buy Modern Masters 2, which were $10 a pack, I probably opened 60 packs.
Right.
And I pulled one Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, because
that's $600.
Is he a mythic?
He's a mythic, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you're gonna be
exactly, like if I'm going looking
right
to build a specific deck and just pulling out of booster packs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be. There's no amount of money I can have that would.
Well,
As
not
a
not
normal
not that you're a
person,
realistic player. Yeah, you have to have a second job just for buying Magic cards,
or
and then you have to have storage units
if
for
I want to
your
make a
extra Magic
goblin
cards.
deck out of a bunch of old goblins,
Right.
I can't buy those packs. They're like freaking $20 a pack. Some of them old
Yeah,
packs,
some of those are way more, but
and
yeah,
most of what I'm gonna get is garbage in there anyways.
right. Yeah, and then you're gonna have a warehouse full of bins,
A
full of
warehouse full of
cards.
stuff that I just don't like. What am I gonna burn it as firewood? It's not
Right.
gonna burn very good, you know.
No.
And so the idea of like the secondary market, as far as like a tournament player and a competitive player in a constructed format,
Right.
is invaluable.
Yeah. No, it is.
Like it's way more worthwhile for me to spend $2,000
Yep.
and build a legacy deck with all the super expensive lands and all the whatever I need,
$2,000.
rather
You're funny
than
now since dual lands are like $1,000 a piece.
yeah, that's crazy.
I mean,
But the idea is like I have to.
yeah.
If I want to play in tournaments, I
Yeah.
have to.
There's no. Yeah.
There's really no way around it. And
Well, you wouldn't have any of those old formats at all if they didn't have secondary
it
markets.
just wouldn't
I mean,
exist.
they wouldn't exist. You couldn't because you can't get enough people, even in bigger cities. You would have a heck of a time getting enough people in even one game store that would have access to enough cards.
You might have enough copies of a card to run one deck.
Yeah, right.
The
But
whole
to
game
try
store.
and say like you want to go into say even down in the cities, and you walk in and say you want 12 versions of Tarmogoyfs, they're just probably gonna laugh at you. Or 12 dual lands.
Yeah.
Say you want 12 tropical islands.
Yeah,
They're gonna like,
well,
yeah, okay, buddy, have a nice day.
well, the ones that have been around for years and years will have it, but
Right, but well, at that point you're gonna be paying $500-600 a freaking tropical island, so you're gonna be paying for 10 grand just to do that.
yeah,
And so a lot of
Or-
stores aren't gonna keep that inventory because one, that's just a lot of money sitting there.
yeah. Well, a lot of them, like I know the one that I used to frequent, they had them listed on eBay basically perpetually,
Yeah.
and they also had them in a lockbox in a safe.
Yeah.
You couldn't look if you wanted to look at them. The guy was gonna watch you while you looked at them.
Yeah,
you weren't
you
allowed
don't-
to take
you
them out
don't
of the
wanna-
sleeves. You know, like
You don't want to mess around with that stuff too much.
yeah, and so like there's definitely a luxury good access that is difficult to achieve.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so let's talk about secondary markets for some of the other
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it changes based on the type of game you're playing for sure.
Yeah,
With Magic, there really is only one secondary market. That's literally the cards. I mean, there are sleeves and other things like that to go along with the pure chaos of it all, but
yeah, but I don't know if we want to talk about
no, not that kind of secondary
the
market.
peripheries, but more
Right.
like the actual what you need to play the game.
Right. When you start talking, well, yeah, you don't want sleeves. Them are just accessories. But secondary markets are starting to pop up a lot with the Kickstarter, I'd say probably did a lot because they created games that say like I'll use Charterstone or Scythe for instance.
Yep.
They automatically come with wood pieces and they're nice quality pieces. But you could upgrade for the metal pieces,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. But that got a lot of other companies going, why can't I just make new pieces for Catan instead of having the cardboard
Yeah.
pieces? Let's make our own resin pieces, our own 3D printed pieces. Let's paint them all. Let's make it fancy. And that market is going crazy right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about the board game market a little bit.
Yeah,
then.
yeah. I would say, go ahead.
I don't know if I'd call this a periphery. I guess it's like a periphery thing, but at the same time, it's not because it's kind of essential if you want to play a game in a timely manner.
Right.
The sorting.
Oh, yeah.
Sorting
Yeah,
inserts.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Gloomhaven, for instance.
Yeah.
You get this 30-pound box of parts. You have it all in these cardboard pop-outs. You pop them all out. There's no sorting tray.
Yeah, there's no, yeah.
So what do? You go to Etsy, you go to eBay. Etsy is probably the quickest place to go. You find someone that's 3D printed or made it out of wood or already
MDF usually.
MDF, yeah, and they just laser cut it out and now it fits in your box. All your parts are nice and neat.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the companies make their own as well.
Not as many though, and I think some companies are starting to catch on. I think mostly still indie companies.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say, and sadly, the indie companies are becoming the primary companies. The days of
one
Milton
company.
Brothers or
Milton Bradley and Hasbro.
yeah, Hasbro, Milton Bradley, Parker Brothers. That was
Parker
the one I was
Brothers,
thinking
yeah.
of. Those games are kind of those companies are still producing their games, but like it's the indie companies now that are becoming the big companies, and they're starting to get smarter towards the game development.
Well, it's kind of interesting too because like this is going to be a weird analogy, but it
Yeah,
reminds me a lot of like music,
right,
where in the early 1900s, late 1800s, there wasn't much for like variety in music.
right,
I mean, there was in like different countries and stuff, but like if you lived in where we live right now, you maybe had 1 out of 100 people that could play an instrument,
right,
and they knew the songs that were taught to them,
right.
and so like that's all you had.
Yeah, and it was literally like where we live, it's Scandinavian, so whatever the primary instruments they knew, that was literally everybody knew how to play
That's
an
what people call
accordion
the
and
accordions, yeah,
maybe a piano or an
yeah.
organ or something. That was
That
probably
was it.
about the limits of their.
And they knew what was taught to them
Yep.
because most of them couldn't read music and anything like
Right.
that. And then making your own
Right.
was like so far fetched.
Right.
But then you get into the 20s and onward, and recording software and the ease of making your own became so much better.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here with the board
Yeah.
games.
I would agree. We're seeing a lot of.
And that's what's making these indie companies kind of just explode.
Yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. I love it because one, it makes the market easy for a smaller game store because I can literally go ahead and custom my own game boards with my printers and my whatevers, and people want to play that. They want to play those custom pieces. Like people definitely comment on how nice the scythe pieces are.
Yeah.
Or scythe.
Scythe.
Then how only nice they are. Well, it's secondary market stuff. I mean,
yeah,
I think that company made them themselves. You bought them,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. They I think they hired a satellite company to manufacture all of their metal.
Yeah,
pieces.
which is really cool. But the other market I was thinking of with all this happening is now with that happening, you have a lot of people getting into board games that maybe weren't into board games. You know, there's a whole generation, I would like to think, of people that didn't play a lot of board games. I grew up playing a lot of board games. We didn't have tons of video. We still had video games when I was a kid, but nothing like, you know, the kids these days.
Yeah.
A lot of kids these days, and even probably back to my son and my daughter, maybe even your age, there's probably some board games in your house, and most of the ones you probably played were like Axis and Allies, Risk, you know, maybe Monopoly. I don't know what your family played, but
Monopoly, Yahtzee,
right,
kind of all the stuff like that.
But now you have that. But that was it.
Yeah,
there was just a basic gap. Now you bought a lot of games over the years.
Yeah,
and I know I bought my fair share. Everybody's kind of realizing that, hey, especially with the pandemic when it happened, wow, there's a lot of board games out there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of board game companies making, and it's not just European companies anymore.
Yeah.
Primarily, most of the board games, ironically enough, came from Europe.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole European style.
Right. It's a huge deal over there, and it's kind of a prestigious thing over there, where over here it was just kind of like Monopoly, Candyland, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I mean, some of the ones that really broke through and made the board game popular again was stuff from Europe, like Ticket to Ride.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride,
Catan.
Some of the other ones. Yeah, they really took off. But anyway, with the secondary market, there's two levels to that. One is the accessories you can buy off of the secondary market. I know there's companies they make their whole living off of making parts. And then there's the reselling of which I do a lot.
Yeah.
I buy old board games from rummage sales and stuff, and I sell parts off because people are starting to get into board games. I noticed that some of the younger people that are buying, and I've asked people that buy parts from me, hey, you know, if you don't mind, ask a couple questions. You know, I'm just curious because I'm trying to get an idea what I'm selling to and who I'm selling to. And it ends up being people that are 30 and younger going, well, I found this board game in my mom's closet or my grandma's closet, and it's missing parts. So I just wanted to buy the parts. So I didn't want to go and buy the new game. I just wanted to buy the one we had. And so I think I've sold a lot of stuff like that. And I've started creating stuff for our board games. You know, I'm printing out 3D Catan 3D
tiles.
Yeah. So then we have someone in the store that's gonna paint those, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway.
Let's move into the next phase of secondary market, or the next topic,
Yep.
sub umbrella, if you will.
Right.
I want to talk about secondary market in tabletop RPGs
Yeah, that's a huge,
because that has
such a
become
big deal.
massive.
It's ridiculous right now,
Because
which is a great time for us.
so I want to take a trip down memory lane,
Mm-hmm.
and in second edition you had TSR.
Yep.
What did you have for secondary market back then?
I mean, the most things we had, there was a few dice companies,
Yep.
very few though. The Chessex maybe was making dice back then, but Ralph Partha made dice,
Yep.
and I had some of those. And then wherever you could,
And minis,
yeah, minis.
It was a wild.
The Ralph
west for
Partha,
minis, yeah.
and I mean, there was a few other companies that made some that was getting into it a little bit, but Ralph Partha was really the only big company.
Yeah, and if you
get stuff
wanted,
from.
God forbid, you wanted the terrain piece for your
Oh
minis,
yeah, no,
you're making that.
yeah, and there was,
DM screens.
yeah,
First edition, you're making your own DM screens.
Yeah.
People used to print off their own DM screens, and
well, heck, they would, like, I know our
I
DM
could tell you how many were handwritten.
our DM used to have one of the original. He had one of the original red boxes.
Yeah.
That he converted. He just took some like 1/2-inch plywood, glued the freaking red box part onto the thing, and put hinges on there. That's literally was his DM screen, and then whatever on the back, he just would tape on handwritten notes for what he needed
what he
to know.
needed,
Yeah. So that
So,
was literally our DM
Then we
screen
move
back then.
into like third edition,
Yep.
and that's when Wizards did something that really, when Wizards acquired D&D,
Yep.
and they released 3.0 and 3.5, that's
Yep.
when the open game license became a thing.
Yeah, the old GL. Yeah.
And that is kind of what broke open the secondary market.
Right.
It released the sluice gates and let all the water out.
It made it a lot easier for companies to Piazza or however you want to pronounce it. I mean, they immediately made their own version. Pathfinder.
Iron Kingdoms.
Yeah, Iron Kingdoms, yep.
Die 20 Modern.
Yeah, pretty much anything Die 20 came from that open game.
Yeah, and there's still games being made today that are based off of that game license. Like Dungeon Crawl Classics is technically based on Die 20, the Die 20 Open GL, more or less.
Yeah,
and then we move into fourth edition. Then it really
and more companies started making minis then. So we had Reapers jump into play. They had plastic and metal minis at that time. And there was a few others. I can't think of all of them right off my top of my head. Spoon Teaks, Ralph Partha, Rockcliffe, Comstock. I think they all did minis for and most of them were still pewter at the time, even back in the 90s, even up until 2000s. There were still a lot of companies putting a lot of pewter out because that's just where the molds were.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until I'd like to say fourth edition, at the end of 3.5. I know there were some that were coming out in the boxes, the blister packs where you get like 4 or 5 minis in a box. I think you can get those in 3.5, but they're kind of expensive.
Yeah, I've seen some
aftermarket of those right now
for
because they're rare minis. But like fourth edition, them are a little cheaper because it was a very unpopular system.
Yeah, which is funny because like actually the minis were really good at that.
Yeah.
If you buy, I remember buying like a set of holders and a set of dragons,
right?
And it was like a collector's box,
right.
And it had a bunch of dragons in
it,
and the stack cards for them for that edition and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
But so fourth edition, one of the first things I remember we got for a secondary book was a critical and fumble table.
Yep.
A book full of just critical.
Yeah, it wasn't just handwritten or found off of some forum somewhere.
Exactly. It was someone had taken the time to make the book and print it and sell it.
Yeah.
And
which is definitely I would be probably fourth edition. I don't remember exactly.
And then we go to fifth edition, and now we have entire companies that are printing books that are.
Yeah, well, I think with fifth edition, and I remember pretty clearly when fifth edition came out, it was by far the biggest release of a
D&D,
a tabletop RPG by far. And at that point, the market is no longer reserved for just the books of fifth ed. Now you have gaming tables, you have dice trays, dice towers, Wormwood,
you have
these gaming. Like we have a gaming table here in the store, and this is one of the first companies to make them. And now there's, I mean, you throw a stick, you can hit a company and make something for a tabletop RPG.
Yeah, well, and, like a great example was like you just said, Wormwood, or in the D&D sphere specifically, Kobold Press comes to mind.
Yeah.
They made all of their money just making stuff for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition that Wizards didn't want to make.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's getting to be quite a wild trip. I every year I go for Christmas and stuff, for birthdays. Both of my kids are fairly into tabletop RPG, so I've always tried to get them something cool.
Yeah.
Now there's just so many choices. It's like, what do you pick?
Yeah.
The secondary market is so huge. And to think about it, this is like not even the golden age yet. This is like the silver age. We're still in a very infancy stage of
because we're weeding out a lot of what isn't good right now.
Right. Yeah, we're literally weeding out right now the garbage.
And it's just kind of amazing to me, as well, like the secondary supplements that are even within the companies.
Oh yeah.
Like the cards.
It's
like the spell cards.
Yeah,
and
spell cards. Yeah, literally spell cards. What?
And it's just
like, who thought of spell cards? We did them on index cards back in the day.
Or the player pack.
But holy jeez.
Yeah, like if you're a ranger, you can buy a whole pack that has like all the stuff you need.
All your abilities,
magic items, monsters, everything.
It's there. You think of anything in 5th ed or even pretty much anything. You have initiatives. I mean, they have. Like, I even bought beanbags for initiatives, so you can just throw beanbags. Yeah. Because everybody likes playing and fiddling, and you throw beanbags at each other. Okay, so what? You're not going to hurt anybody, right?
And it has your number on it.
Yeah, it has your number, so you know. It's just one of those things. There's just there's the little rings that people made to fit around the bases of the WizKid minis, the 1-inch minis, and that'll be your condition markers. And that's for all the systems, because it's not just for
5th ed.
It can be for DCC. There's ones for Pathfinder. Whatever system that uses conditions. There's somebody out there that made parts for them now. It's pretty insane. It's like I said, I don't even think we're just in such an infancy stage right now. Well, I'd say maybe we're toddlers.
We're approaching the adolescence.
Which kids are gonna step into the fire, which ones aren't.
Yep.
Kind of the stage where
we're at the make or break it kind of.
It's companies. It's you can see some of the good companies. Like we bought our table. Well, we got our table. That company's went out just because there's other companies out there doing it better now.
Yeah,
and this is not a bad table. This is one of the first companies to put in
power outlets
and make the tabletop removable. And then there's indent. I mean, it's just crazy. We added lights to it, so that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the tabletop RPGs, and then not only that, but to mention like. We did a whole episode on it, but like virtual tabletops and e-publications.
VGTs.
And then I think one of the biggest things for the secondary market as far as supplements was the print-on-demand sites.
Yeah, Hero Forge. Well, one of the bigger ones.
Hero Forge is one for minis.
Yep.
But also Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah, Drive-Thru RPG. Yeah. You can just order the book on there.
The idea of like, there's entire companies out there that are devoted to, oh, you want this? We'll print it for you.
Yeah, or we'll send you the PDF. Or we'll send you the PDF. But either way. You'll get your print.
You'll get your hands on it, yeah.
Pretty cool.
And you don't have to rely on a major company to produce the book.
No, it's really crazy. I know that if you would have told 10-year-old Scott back in the day, or Guff or whatever, that this stuff was going to be happening now, I'd have laughed at you.
Yeah,
there's no way.
It's crazy, right?
We were playing on index cards and makeshift everything. Now you don't have to have your imagination. We still use imagination a lot around here, but you don't have to use it as much.
Yeah, I play mostly theater of the mind, so I don't dabble in supplements. I'd rather buy a different RPG system and play that than hone in on having every amenity for.
I think that's a good way for a lot of people to get involved. But I know there's a lot of visual people that like that scenery.
Yeah.
I know there was a group, we played in a group for quite a few years, that when we brought the scenery out and we started using it, people were really excited about it because then they can visualize what's going on. Some people just can't visualize. But I didn't know that until a few years ago. My wife told me she doesn't visualize very well. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't visualize? Well, it's something along the lines of, I think of a guy, let's say a warrior in plate mail standing on top of a tower waiting for a dragon to come by. I can visually see that happening.
Yeah.
My wife's like, I have no clue what you're talking about. So you put it on paper, I can see what's happening, but I can't. In my mind, I can't see
yeah,
that.
some people just
Which I'm surprised. There's actually a lot of people. It's like 50% of the population just can't visualize.
well, it's the difference between
So-
like is it like what's it? It's spatial recognition or something
Something like that, yeah.
But like it's a great example is like a guy that can like look at a trailer and just build a trailer
Right.
after looking at it.
Right, just looking at it and go, oh, I can build that. Yeah,
And
no
then
problem.
people that need like the blueprints to build it.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so I think with the crowd that needs that visual aid, I like visual aids. I don't need them. I'm perfectly fine with having my imagination play.
I've always done them for like set piece battles. Like if there's an important fight in
Right.
D&D, like where they're fighting the big bad evil guy, or it's like a chapter ending
Right.
fight, I'll always try to at the very least get the board pieces,
Right.
get the minis, and try to make it so that like in the important fight, there's not the discrepancy of, oh, my character was like this way facing this way.
Right.
It's just a visual aid, and it helps keep everybody on the same page.
Right. Yeah. No.
So it has its purpose for sure.
Right.
I guess the last thing I want to talk about for secondary markets.
Yep.
Is war games.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about war games lately.
A lot of stuff on it. We've probably talked about everything that we're going to talk about just in bits and pieces.
Yeah. So I guess this is a collection of the secondary market for war games. Legion. I want to talk about Legion a little bit.
Yep.
Legion's pretty cheap as far as war games go, like the grand war games.
Right.
And honestly, like the biggest secondary market I can think of for any of these is
probably Train.
eBay.
eBay, yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Going on eBay.
Because there's so many people. I mean, I've done it myself. There's so many people that pick up a Legion army or a Warhammer army or a Flames of War or Bolt Action or Kingdoms of War.
Right.
Is it Kingdoms of War? I think it's called Kingdoms of War. I can't remember what it's called. And they play an army for a year.
Right.
A new book comes out and their army's garbage, or they want to play something else and they don't want to have two armies.
Right.
So they sell their army on eBay for a fraction of what they paid for it.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane.
Or somebody finds a collection, somebody passes away and you find a collection in an attic of a bunch of plastic tanks and toy soldiers. And you're like, oh, this ain't worth nothing. But then they put it on eBay or talk to somebody.
Right.
And the secondary market is pretty important to the health of the game.
Yeah, no, it is very important. I think that we need secondary markets for those games.
And one of the coolest things about the secondary markets for miniatures, I think, is the people that do rescues.
Yeah, that's its own little world, isn't it?
It is. It's a sub-world within it, but it's the idea of like someone built or painted a mini as like their first mini or their first army, and it's kind of like subpar. It's not super great. It's the best they could do, but it's like there's pieces missing or whatever, what have you. And then they just sell it on eBay for dirt cheap because they're like, well, if someone wants to give me money for it, I'll get rid of it.
Right.
And then you get guys that do, and then they 3D print the missing pieces and strip all the paint off and repaint it, and you'd never be able to tell that it was in a bad state to begin with.
Jeez, there's that whole bits market too.
And the bits market, yeah.
That's insane. You buy...
I've seen people buy...
It's crazy. I was just looking at it today.
$35 bits bundles.
Yeah.
Not bits bundles, but they buy the sprues.
Yeah, and there's not much in them.
Yeah, and it's like they'll sell like a plasma pistol for $40K for like $2, and that's $4 shipping. And then you're like, okay. And then by the time you get like enough to make one mini, you paid for the whole box.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. That's a whole market. It's crazy.
And then now we get into spooky territory.
Yep.
And the put your tinfoil hat on and use your VPN, because we're talking about recasting and printing official models. And that's a slippery slope. I do not advise anybody to do this.
Right. No.
I've seen one guy on YouTube who did it the correct way. Only one guy I've ever seen that did it the right way, in my opinion. This is opinion based, of course.
Right.
But it's also kind of backed up by copyright law. So
take for what it's worth.
Disclosure, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a fair understanding of copyright law.
You could be a lawyer, though.
I could try one day. Maybe.
I've seen you try it. It's pretty fun.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so there's a bunch of companies out there that used to buy GW models. Most of these are Chinese companies.
Right.
And Forge World they did a lot with Forge World stuff. And what they do is when they get the kits, they'd cut them out or whatever, and they'd take molds of them and then they'd pour them out of resin. They'd make their own repours of GW sculpts.
That's crazy.
And it's unfortunate,
right?
Because you could buy it for dirt cheap, and once it's painted, you'll never know.
Right.
You'd never know.
Right. Oh, yeah. For the average person, you would have no clue.
And 3D prints, if you're gonna 3D print 3D printing proxies is fine in my opinion. You can't do it if you're gonna go to a tournament, obviously. But if you're playing at a local game store, you're getting into the game, whatever. 3D print your proxies if you want.
Right.
Do not 3D print. This is for your own safety. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but this is just good advice. Do not 3D print anything that is an official sculpt of somebody else's stuff.
Right.
Because if you try to sell that, or if you do anything,
even down the road, say 5 years down the road, you're like, I'm gonna switch armies, or I'm gonna quit playing because I got married.
You sell it off. All of a sudden, you have all
kinds of lawsuits coming.
Exactly. You could be sued. Yeah, so just be wary of that.
These companies, by right, they spend a lot of time and money in paying sculptors to make the models.
I've heard this argument so many times of, oh well, X company charges so much for their stuff, so I'm not going to pay it. I'm just going to print it, or I'm just going to buy a recast.
Right.
And it's like, no, like if they have a right to charge what they want to charge, you might not like it or want to pay it.
Right.
I'm sorry, like, but
exactly.
You're stealing IP. It's the whole idea of like, I can't go out and play a Taylor Swift song and claim that I wrote it and sell it for money.
No, that would not go for well.
Because what you're doing is you're taking a recording of a song, let's say, and you're just selling it as your own.
Right. No,
and they have millions of dollars, whatever. It's not going to hurt them, but over time, this shit does matter.
Well, it's not. It's also
the old Napster debate, you know. Like
it's also the principle of it all. Is if you're one of those people that, well, it's just time money. Okay, think about how much. Okay, you got to value. You got to put time and value into everything, and we've talked about this many times. So, for instance, you buy a video game. If I pay $30 for a video game, I want 30 hours out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't want to go to a bar because that's $30 is about 2 drinks and you're done. Like that's just not my value. It's no value to me.
Not worth it to you. Yeah.
But to me, if I buy STLs from somebody that handcrafted, say orcs that GW doesn't make, I'm okay with that because I'm paying that person for their time and their ability to craft. As long as they're not making GW models and calling them their own or scanning them in, which you can usually tell. Because scanning is not nearly as good as somebody that's actually handcrafted, which I've seen some of the models you've printed.
They look great.
They're great.
Yeah, they look great.
And that person deserves something for the talent and the effort they put into it.
And then that's like the whole idea of like taking other people's STLs and reselling them.
Right.
And so like I will never feel bad for somebody that scans a GW model and sells it as an STL. If someone else takes that STL that they've scanned and sells it as their own.
Right.
Because they're just doing exactly what you did.
Right, exactly.
They just cut out a step.
Yeah.
So I guess back to what we're talking about rather than this weird ranty tangent. It's just a big disclaimer I have to throw out there for legal reasons.
Right.
If you're going to print stuff, try to print proxies or try to print stuff that's adjacent to what you want to print.
Right.
And honestly, if you can afford to buy the GW stuff on eBay, or buy it secondary, I highly recommend doing that over printing your own, unless if you don't like the sculpts.
Right.
But back to my little anecdote of the guy who did it right. So I'm not going to name any names to keep them out of trouble, whatever. I was watching a YouTube video of a guy painting a Slanesh Dreadnought.
Okay.
GW does not make this anymore.
Okay.
And he bought one on eBay that was kind of in rough shape.
Right.
And then, so part of the arms were broken, some bits were missing. So what he did was he had to go to get the correct bits because he wanted to keep it mostly original. He had to go and buy a recast.
Okay.
He bought the recast and he only cut off of the recast what he needed.
Right.
It was like a hand and like one little emblem is what he ended up. He bought a whole recast just for a hand and an emblem. But GW doesn't print it anymore.
Right.
So now we get into like that area of like if somebody doesn't print something, is it okay to then print it? You know, like There's just a lot of gray area.
I think that.
But the STL market and all that stuff for
Right.
secondaries is huge.
I'd say that someday there will be a lawsuit that says one way or another, because Disney just gave up the rights to Mickey Mouse, the first Mickey Mouse.
Well, they didn't give up the rights.
No, they lost.
Right.
They lost it because of the first version of Mickey Mouse now is open source now.
Steamboat, well, because that's in the United States copyright law. Right. It's 75 years plus the life of the author, and that was pushed back for years because of lobbying.
Yeah, because they did that, right? But I think that once we're going to hit a spot where the hobby industry in itself is going to hit a lawsuit at some point that's going to make this happen.
The intellectual property is recognized by most countries. I think China and Russia and there's some other countries that don't recognize it.
Yeah, but if they have their own versions.
If you have intellectual property in the United States or in the UK, I know there's reciprocity there.
Right.
So like if you publish something in the UK, a book,
right,
someone in the United States can't go and be like, oh, well, I'm in a different country, so your laws don't affect me. There's a lot of international law that does protect copyright.
Right.
And that just gets into the whole.
Right. Well, I think at some point we'll hit that to where like GW doesn't make models anymore, and you still want to use cool models from back in the day that you had because maybe you have an army from back then, and your models are not made anymore. And you're like, well, yeah, my kid ate 2 of them, or my dog ate a pile. Like in the case of a guy that I did Grey Knights for, his dog ate a whole pile of them. Yeah. They don't even make those models anymore.
Yeah.
So now it'd be nice for him to be able to get those models back. But I imagine at some point
some people don't have like the mechanical skill to sculpt.
Right.
Resculpt it, right?
No.
Like, so it's like at that point, do you do the best you can, or do you?
I imagine at some point there'll be a law saying, "Hey, this is how long GW has the rights to their model after they quit printing."
Well, there is stuff like that in the U.S. I don't know a lot about UK copyright law. GW is UK,
right?
But like a great example of like the quote unquote half-life of copyright law is you'll see a lot of people re-releasing albums or remastering albums, and the reason they do that is so that they control the recording.
Yeah, of course.
So, but anyways, yeah, as far as secondary markets go, I think as a general truism, they're healthy. Like a secondary market is generally healthy for the game, because if I buy a $30 Kobold press book, but I don't own the 5th edition player's handbook or the DM's guide, I'm going to need that DM's guide. So the secondary sales can help push forward your primary sales.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of companies understand that. Yep. A lot of companies fight it tooth and nail, but there are a lot of companies that understand it. Hence, in case of Wizards of the Coast, they were going to try get greedy with the open health scandal.
But yeah, the people spoke.
The people spoke, and Wizards are like, oh, you guys actually
are paying attention.
Yeah,
we're not just mindless trolls that don't.
Yeah.
Well, with these things we're talking about, the hobby games and stuff like that, and even board games, for instance, like tabletop RPGs and mini war games. This is a passion for a lot of people. This is their getaway from real life stresses. They literally spend hard-earned money to do this, and companies are spending hard-earned money also. But when you start like Wizards trying to, there's plenty of companies that give their stuff away for free, knowing full well you'll support them in the long run with modules and stuff, because a lot of people love modules.
Yeah,
it's the easiest way for them and their friends to get. People and their friends get together and just
some people don't have 8 hours to prep a session.
No, sometimes it's nice just to whip out a module and go, oh, okay, well, I read through the module once, I know how it works.
Yeah, I got a general idea. Yeah,
right. So,
anyways, that's it for this episode. Yeah. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're on YouTube.
Yeah, or anywhere. Yeah,
or anywhere.
You can't promise I'm going to get them on iTunes, but I know they do there, but I don't check there. So
you can send all your emails to wedon'tcare@wedon'tcare.com.
There you go. Better check me.
All your complaints.
That should be a website.
Send all your complaints to wedon'tcare@wedon'tcare.com. Send all your feedback to the YouTube comments.
There you go.
So, anyways, that's it for this week.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all we got.
Next week we should talk about. Oh yeah. All right. Later.